Good morning. Welcome to Gimpy's History Corner. I'm called Gimpy by my oldest grandson, Ellis, who's sitting here with his Aunt Casey. And they're having a conversation with these sculptures of the Empire State Building workers. You think they understand that they're actually sculptures? Probably not. Okay, so this is video number 81, and it's on George Orwell. Took my information from this book I have at my house, Orwell by Michael Sheldon. And get a good picture of George Orwell here in his later life with his adopted son, Richard. Okay, he was English. He was actually born Eric Arthur Blair in 1903 in British India. George Orwell was his pen name. His father was Richard Blair, who was in the Indian Civil Service, which meant he worked for the government in India. His mother was Ida Mabel Blair, had French and English in her background. Parents were a mixture of French and English. Eric had two sisters from a modest middle-class household. At age 4, Mom brought the kids back to England at Henley-on-the-Thames. Eric was shy and sickly as a child, was home in bed a lot with bronchitis. He started at a convent school before winning a scholarship to Eton, probably the most prestigious school in England. That's where the royal family sends their kids. He remained an outsider at school around all these rich schoolmates. Remember, he was shy and sickly. He started writing poetry and essays during his school years at Eton. He graduated in 1921 and joined the Indian Imperial Police. Went back. But this was in Burma, which is next to India. And today I think they call that Myanmar. Lots of stuff going on there that's disruptive with religion. He served on the Indian Imperial Police for 5 years, stationed at an outpost, and witnessed harsh colonial behavior on a part of the British. Kind of turned him against the colonialism idea. In 1927, he resigned, returned to England, and chose to immerse himself amongst the poor of London and Paris. Writers will do this sometimes so they can come up with ideas for books and essays. His first major work came out of this, called Down and Out in Paris and London, published in 1933. But when he started publishing, he used the pen name George Orwell as a pen name to avoid embarrassing his family. So maybe he thought his family would be embarrassed that he was living in poor neighborhoods, probably. He also wrote The Burmese Days in 1934 and Keep Aspidistra Flying in 1936. And in 1936, like Dos Passos and Hemingway, he traveled to Spain to participate in their civil war. Lots of writers, lots of Americans did that. Apparently, Eric Blair did too. He was to fight against the fascists of General Franco. But he was wounded, I think, in the neck, and was disillusioned by the internal conflict among his leftist forces. So apparently there were people within the movement that argued over things, and that upset him. He wanted them to be united, and they were not. He wrote Homage to Catalonia in 1938, which was against the leftist side, so the leftist press did not like it much. And then Coming Up for Air, he published in 1939. World War II came along. He was declared unfit for duty because of his war wound in his neck, and he had chronic tuberculosis. Still sickly. But you see pictures of him, he's got a cigarette in his hand or his mouth. That can't help. Okay, but during the war, he worked for the BBC, which was a government radio's channel, their Eastern service, which broadcast to India, and he did cultural broadcasts to India. He also did some writing for a left-wing magazine, the Tribune. Again, he was disappointed in the left-wing Soviet-backed forces in the Spanish Civil War, but then started writing for a left-wing magazine. 1945, he wrote Animal Farm, which was a satirical allegory of the Russian Revolution. Now, this came out at the end of World War II, when England and Russia were still allies fighting against Germany. So it initially did not do well, but once the Cold War started and Russia became the enemy, then it became popular. Animal Farm, which I read way back in middle school or high school, I think. In 1946, he moved from England to a Scottish island in order to write better. He thought he would write better if he was solitary on an island. But I don't know if that works or not. But it did in his case. 1949, he published 1984, a dystopian masterpiece warning against government surveillance and censorship. So 1984 gets referenced all the time in modern days when government does something, whether eavesdropping or using cameras, or the Edward Snowden case where he released what the NSA does in capturing phone calls and emails and so forth of American citizens. Because 1984 and Animal Farm easily were his two most successful books. When you talk about Orwellian thought, they're talking about making fun of the Russians and making fun of government surveillance and censorship. So, marriage-wise, he got married in 1936 to a lady named Eileen O'Shaughnessy, and they adopted a son named Richard. I showed you a picture of him, I believe. Here's a picture of Eric Blair, or George, with his son Richard. And Eileen was very helpful to him during his career. She was involved with media. She went to the Spanish Civil War with him and worked kind of like a nurse. But she died in 1945, about the time that Animal Farm came out. So he struggled raising Richard by himself, so was always looking for a second wife to help take care of Richard, because his health was bad still. And even in the hospital when he was dying of tuberculosis, he married a lady by the name of Sonia Brownell. He was mostly concerned with Richard and his literary estate. So he convinced Sonia to marry him to take care of Richard and his estate. And he died in 1950 at age 46. So he wasn't very old when he died. All those illnesses caught up with him. Okay, that's George Orwell. Seen here writing in short sleeves, probably maybe India, I don't know. Went back and forth between England and India. Father was a British civil servant. Got a scholarship to Eton, which is prestigious, and turned that into a writing career and became one of the most well-known English authors in history. George Orwell, also known as Eric Blair. Okay, thank you. Have a great day.